Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com, and this video is more about JavaScript object-oriented programming. But this case is like, how do you do it without classes? Because there's a couple things to know. Back before classes existed in JavaScript, you could still do constructors. You just had to do them like this, and it was really confusing. So function, let's say dog, pass in a name, and you would say like this dot name equals name, and then you would say, hey, const Sparky equals new dog Sparky. And if we console log Sparky, you see I got it. I now have an object called Sparky. So technically you were already able to do this in JavaScript before. Now there's two problems with this. One, this is really confusing when you're, realizing, hey, this function syntax can allow me to make classes and it allows me to write normal run-of-the-mill functions. That's really, really confusing. So in 2015, when they released ES6, they added classes and said, okay, and they added arrow functions. So they said, you know what, this whole function thing, this doesn't make sense. Write functions using arrow functions that are just pure functions, and then write classes using classes. Because one of the other problems is when you use this function keyword to define global functions, it hoists them. So basically by creating classes this way, your classes and your functions were all hoisted, which means that the interpreter would first look for all the functions and class or all these function definitions and add those to the memory before it ran any of the code, which if you had a lot of function definitions could cause some latency. Now this is fine for like compilers, because in compilers there is no rush. Okay, you're not running the code, so you don't have a user on the other side waiting for all this stuff to happen. But in an interpreted language, the longer it takes to get to the actual executable part of the code, the more of a problem that is. So they didn't necessarily remove hoisting, but what they did is they created a different function syntax that avoids the hoisting. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And then again, it only matters with global functions where you started off with the function keyword. So technically, if I wanted to avoid hoisting with this dog, I could technically do this. Const dog equals. This would still allow me to create a new object, just would avoid the hoisting. Okay, so I still create a dog named Sparky, because the difference is the declaration's beginning with const, so it's a variable declarations and variables aren't hoisted. So just that's a fun thing to know. But let's say you just want to avoid all this altogether. You just didn't want to have to think about all this constructor and all this stuff. Objects are a freestanding data structure in JavaScript, which is not the case for most other languages. In most other languages, you have no choice but to create classes. To create custom objects, you have to create the blueprint for the object first. And that is the only way. In JavaScript, one of the unique languages that just says, hey, if you want to just create an object, just define it. Just do it. Okay? So what you could do is you can create just standard functions that create objects for you. Okay, so let's just say const dog, and we can do this as an arrow function, name equals, and it returns an object. Okay, I'm going to use an implicit return, so I'm not putting any. No, I am going to use curly brackets. It always gets a little funky when there's an object definition inside of it. So we're going to return this object, and this object is going to be have a name, which equals. We'll just put name because the key is name. So there we go. So basically, it just returns an object with the property name. Just for now, just to kind of illustrate the point. So I could create a function that returns an object that has all the stuff that I want in it, and I can take parameters. It's basically doing all the same thing, and that object created that way is the same. The only things I'm really missing out on here is the existence of a prototype. So in that case, every time I run this function, a new object is created, and it holds all those properties as a part of it. So So that's a thing. And two, which one, it'll be able to access those properties faster because it's a property of the object, not a property of a prototype. But also it takes up more memory because now you have, every time you create a new object, all those properties are now an exact replica, and you're creating several different copies of that property. But again, you have these options, and for the most part, it's not going to affect too much first, unless you're doing lots and lots of instantiation. And generally, in most applications in JavaScript, you're not doing that much instantiation where you're going to notice a difference between creating objects this way. The other issue with creating objects this way is that you don't get a named constructor. So that means if you wanted to use instance of, the, kind of like in my previous videos where I said like, hey, is this an instance of this? You won't necessarily be able to test it as a custom object. But again, it depends on what your application is. But I mean, this would work. I can still sit here and say, hey, const Sparky equals, dog Sparky. And I don't have to use the new keyword because I'm not using a constructor function. And again, this is just, a cool little benefit of just JavaScript in general, that I don't necessarily have to use classes to do object-oriented programming. Actually, I should probably console.log Sparky. Console.log Sparky. Save. Cool. And, I could do whatever. Okay, and then I could sit there and do something like this, like, then I can do something like size. And I can just make this a little bit more complicated. So we'll say new dog equals, we'll just say let new dog equal this. And then I can do a switch. And yeah, a switch will work in this situation. Size, and if the case is small, then what'll happen is new dog will equal the existence of the currently new dog, everything the new dog property currently has, or the new dog object currently has, plus a bark function. So function, and I'm going to use this function syntax so that way I can use the this keyword. Okay, console.log backticks. Okay, and all I'm doing is I'm just combining existing objects. So let's see here, or I'm just adding this function, console.log with backticks, and we'll say this.name. Oh, that's this syntax, this.name is yapping. Okay, and then there's that. And wait, that's got to have a value, so we'll say bark. It's got to have a key. So there we go. Bark is that. And we'll just say large just to keep this simple. And again, I got to put a break here. Control C. Okay, and then this time if it's, we say big. And this time the bark function will just say this, that name is howling. And I can create all sorts of different options for how I construct my dog. Okay, you could do this. And again, you could do this in a class too. But the point is you have options. Okay, and there's different pros and cons and what's going on in the underlying JavaScript engine in different situations. Save. Okay, so now I can be like Sparky, small, And we'll do sparky.bark. Save. What is that? Cannot read property bark of undefined. Let's take a look here. Small, I'm passing in small as a second argument. Name, size. Okay. Case small. This case, Sparky is a dog. Using the dog function. Oh, I didn't return the dog. Okay. That's my problem. I need to return the resulting new dog. Return new dog. And there you go, see? And see, it's a small dog, and I can make it a big dog. Okay, and again, if I make this a big dog, and you see now Sparky is howling. And you know, you can put all sorts of logic in here on how you construct your object. So that we have an object with just the properties you need when you need them. And yeah, so you don't have to worry about inheritance. You can do composition essentially in this case. And just another way to construct objects and to think about how you create solves for your object creation. So my name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy.